My name is Anupama Jan. People call me Anu, and my organization is Inclusant. And I guess I would describe it mostly as increasing people's awareness of people who are different from themselves for a long time. So for 10 years as a professor full-time, I taught undergraduates, and I worked on writing and publishing essays about especially the way that narrative works, because I think giving someone cold facts about other people doesn't always help to humanize them. And I found literature can really bring alive, fiction can really bring alive stories and increase empathy. So that's what I continue to do, but now I'm working more with nonprofit organizations and with individual people, especially in today's heightened sensitivity to racial tensions. So I have worked on race, but for some people who are maybe not as familiar with diversity and inclusion issues, you don't ever just work on one issue like race or gender, that we're all individuals with all of these complicated identities. And so one of the terms that I use a lot is intersectionality, just meaning to understand that people occupy complicated and unpredictable positions. So that's the work that I do with Inclusant, and it really allows me to go into a sort of a more compact space that needs some kind of clarifying, some greater cultural competency training. So often it's because someone perceives a lack of communication between different groups, which then is showing itself often in lack of productivity, difficulty meeting strategic goals. To work both in coalitions, I believe very strongly in organizations finding common cause and supporting each other, because I think it's much more likely that the work will have an impact and continue. But then some of this work is really about personal transformation. It really is about unlearning. That's a word that I use a lot. And I use that partly because when I went to college, I suddenly realized that I had a lot of stories that explained the world that were incomplete or sometimes just incorrect, that either through family or community or in school, that they were simplified versions of things. And so I feel that that is the case, and if we don't have direct experience, in my family, we went back to India every few years from when I was a little child, and I was always aware there are vastly different ways of doing things. There's a lot of factionalism happening right now in the activist community in Pittsburgh, and people who are protesting against things like police brutality, and there are many groups in Pittsburgh who've been doing it for 20 plus years, and newer groups since national events converted them, and friendships are being broken, people are taking sides. It's not easy. I think that Pittsburgh, like many American cities, is fairly segregated, and in some ways more extremely so. Black and white communities are very segregated. I feel like people might have very little perception of a life lived very close to them. You're on the bus, and I think that if it's not threatening, it's often very exciting and enriching to learn about that. So I think global engagement means being aware of what's around you. I think for me it's always about learning. So learning more about yourself, partly by learning more about the world. And then, as I said, I think that there's a lot of injustice in the world because Americans aren't aware of how our international engagements are actually often harmful, and our interventions. And I think if more Americans were to become familiar with those topics and weigh in, that we might have a chance for more positive global relations. Yeah, I think there's a lot of misinformation and just lack of awareness, and that would enrich people's individual lives, but then I think be better for the world as a whole, and ideally make for a less violent world, because there's a lot of anger towards the United States. And we have periods where the immigrants are targeted, and it's happened over and over again, and it just seems like we could learn how to not do that. So the Global Switchboard, I guess, represents a place and a space to start talking about these things, and I would love to see more and more voices, and to have members of the immigrant community making decisions and informing policy in a way that I study assimilation, and historically there were lots of plans made for immigrant communities as compared to inspired by and contributed to. So I feel like the Global Switchboard is holding a space open for that.